Hi and welcome to Teach Start, and today's subject is quite a difficult one really to talk about, and we're going to talk about stress in teaching. So where I want to start really is people who are long-term stressed, and not necessarily signed off work and not necessarily even spoken to anyone, but just feel miserable all the time. And I think for me, the feeling of not wanting to go to work and not just being like, oh, I'm a bit tired, I don't feel like it, or it's going to be a bad day, a bit anxious. But the people who generally really don't want to go to work and are dreading it every single day. And I think sometimes we say that in jest, but I think it's very different to having a kind of intellectual level kind of feeling of not wanting to go to work and a deep down kind of dread in your gut. And the only advice really I'm ever going to give on a YouTube channel is seek professional advice, and the way you can get that advice is from your school, so from the HR department, and some levels talking to your department, talking to your line manager especially, and you can talk about it with people outside of school. So in the links below, I'm going to link just some people, some agencies that you can talk to about stress. I'd also talk to a union. If you're a member of a union, you can discuss that with them. And I think the major unions, I think all the unions have someone who can actually talk to you in that way. So there's loads and loads of avenues to go down if you're feeling long-term stressed. And I don't really want to go too much further in this video because I don't think it's appropriate for a YouTube video to talk about how you deal with that, because to be honest with you, if I was to do a video on that, it will be mumbo jumbo, clickbait, whatever. It just won't be worth it. So you need to talk to someone, because on those kind of situations, it's an issue that you need to have a kind of two-way conversation rather than, oh, if you buy our magic pill, it will make everything go away. No, you need to go through exactly what is the issue. And the only way you can do that is if you talk to someone properly. So I'm going to kind of skirt beyond that type of person, because I think that person needs a one-on-one interaction with someone who can kind of help them a lot more. So the second type, and the type I really want to go on to, I really want to talk about today, is the kind of short-term stress people. The short-term kind of, I'm having a real problem. Recently, I'm just finding it really difficult to go to work. And not necessarily a deep down level, but maybe on an intellectual level, you kind of just feel really stressed going home, that there's some of your work that's coming home with you. Now, some of you might sit here and go, I've been in teaching 15 years and that has been me every single day. And to a certain degree, maybe that is right. And I want to talk about basically how we can deal with that. So we've all had, everyone who's a teacher, and probably others as well, everyone has had a bad day. Everyone has had a bad day. And the use of the word a is probably optimistic. We all have bad days. There are always days that just nothing goes right. And it's very, very difficult to go home at the end of those days and come in the next day and feel all happy and refreshed and cheery and want to go on. But if you're finding it difficult to calm down at the end of a day that's just been really tough, and let's put an example out there. Say if you've had a class and just everything's gone wrong and they've been horrible and they've been nightmare and you're kind of dreading teaching them again, blah, blah, blah. If you've been teaching for, maybe a year or two, or at least a year or two, try and think back to the last bad day you had and try and think about why it doesn't affect you now at all. What did you do 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or even last year, or maybe even last month? What did you do to that? Well, you probably did very little. It just remedied itself. And sometimes bad days just are bad days because it was just destined to be that Tuesday was a bad day, but it just remedied itself. And when I have a stressful day, it helps me think back, right, hang on, what happened last time? What happened last time I had a bad day? I came in the next day and actually everything was fine. And that class, settled down, whatever, and everything was fine after that. And it's that helps me a lot with my classes, especially, when you're in that first couple of weeks or that middle couple of weeks, because obviously you have your honeymoon period and then they start testing you, or you just don't get a honeymoon period and they're awful straight away. And I just think back, okay, well, what happened last year? Okay, they did settle down. Every other class has settled down, and it gives you that belief that actually you can do it. Now, if you're an NQT or a trainee student, you might think, well, hang on, I can't look back. I haven't had a good day yet. Just think in your life, have you had a bad day before in your life? Well, yes, you almost certainly have, unless you're someone who I definitely want to meet has never had a bad day. How did that remedy itself? Was that the worst thing ever? Was that the end of your whole existence? No, you just carried on. You went in on the Wednesday to university or to school or whatever, and everything was fine. Everything remedied itself. Maybe not straight away, but it did eventually. And you've got to get in that mindset of it will be okay, and it will be okay, and most of the time. I think the other thing you've got to do is pick apart why it was a bad day, because normally when I talk to people and friends who are also teachers, and I say, well, why was it a bad day? And they go, I'm not sure. Well, it wasn't just one thing. I go, okay, so form time, was that awful? No, actually they were lovely. I go, okay, period one. Oh no, they were okay, a bit rowdy, but they normally are, and they settle down quickly. And you go through it, and it's just normally just one thing. Okay, sometimes it's not, but normally it's just one thing. And instead of it being a bad day, it was just a bad lesson. Okay, well then that's manageable. So what are you going to do about that? Okay, period 3, that group, that horrible group that you really are not doing well with, what are you going to do about it? And sometimes thinking about things you can do, it empowers you. It makes you feel like you actually are in control. You can talk to your head of faculty or your line manager or your pastoral team. You can talk to them about it and say, look, actually, that class were really not very good yesterday. And you might be in a school that maybe has limited support when it comes to those avenues, but maybe you can sit down and think, okay, well, what went wrong? Why did it go wrong? Was the seating plan not right? Did I pitch that too high? Did I pitch it too low? What was the issue with my lesson? We'll talk about, again, behaviour management and stuff in previous videos, but we are going to come back to it. But try and think about what you can do to try and sort that situation out. That doesn't mean that you don't need sometimes half an hour just venting to a friend or a partner about it. I'm not saying that for a second. We all need that. But it doesn't necessarily help to just have that and then stop. Sometimes it helps just to try and figure out what you're going to do about it and figure out what can be done about it. And the last thing on this point is figure out that actually you're not alone. Okay, I can tell you now, you are not alone. We've all felt like the worst teachers ever, every single one of us. Maybe there's someone out there who thinks they're amazing all the time, publicly, but privately, they probably feel the same. We all have insecurities. We all feel like we're doing a bad job. And, certain schools that you might be a part of probably don't help with that. But know that actually, no, we're all struggling. Every teacher's struggling. Maybe not as much as you for that day, but everyone's had a day like that. And it's really useful for me sometimes to observe teachers who are also struggling. When I was an NQT, I didn't have the easiest of times, but observing people who are also struggling helped a lot because it made me not feel alone and actually, made me think, oh, hang on, well, if other people are having the same issues, I'm not the worst thing ever, but it makes me feel confident that I can try and fix it and try and, work towards being a better teacher at that period of time, or just understand that these things happen and classes just have good days and bad days. The third thing I want to talk about is how do you prevent stress? How do you prevent yourself getting in that position? Well, there's a really good idea I heard quite recently of a teacher who went home at the end of each day. In fact, they did it in school, but you can go home. And they sat and forced themselves to write 3 positive things about the day. Could be anything, it could be tiny, it could be massive, but 3 positive things about the day. And for that teacher, it significantly helped them. They were very much more positive. And I think that teacher kind of with their friends got in a feedback loop of hate and, oh my God, teaching's awful, blah, 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 right? Which we all can get into, and, you know, get teachers together in a bar, and that's more than less what happens. But just writing those 3 positive things down seems really silly and seems like, oh, I don't have time for that. Make time for it. Just find 3 things, write them down, and even just writing them down puts it in your mind that actually it wasn't such a bad day. And it makes one more positive about the day, and it does help. I think as people, we're very, very focused on what we've done badly and not very focused on what we've done well. Like the psychologists would say that we attribute successes externally and failures internally, which means that everything bad is because of you and everything good is because of something else. And that's quite common, unfortunately, in people. That's just life. But the way around that is to try and internalize some of those successes, those 3 successes, internalize them, bring them to you, own them, because 3 always outweighs 1. And if there's 1 bad thing that happened in a day, 3 would outweigh 1. That's how good my maths is. If you do have a stressful day, say if Tuesday you have that horrible group, or if you just happen to have a stressful day, try and do something that's nothing to do with school at the end of that school day. If you've got marking to do, save it for the next day or save it for the weekend. Try and do something else. A lot of teachers go to the gym because it just allows them to take their mind off it. And that is so crucial, because I have met teachers who are working as soon as they get home all the way until they go to bed. And maybe that's okay on a good day, but if you are stressed as heck because of the work, the worst thing you can do is go home and do more of that work, because it just brings that back and you start planning that group's next lesson. And I seem very focused on a bad group. Obviously stress doesn't come from just bad groups, which I may touch on at the end, but I don't want to go too much into that. And the last thing I'll say on this is try and think about the things that trigger you having that stressful experience when you go home. Is it, obviously, is it a class? Then talk to your head of the faculty about maybe mixing that class around or coming in, observing you and supporting you. You know, maybe there's something that the school can do to help you with that. The thing I'm going to touch on, but I don't want to go too far into, is if there is a work colleague or, you know, if there's management or something being the stressor, how can you deal with that? If there are people you can talk to about dealing with that issue? Is it that there's, you know, a colleague who it stresses you out by just constantly, you know, saying something to you or criticizing the way you teach, whatever it is? There are ways of dealing with that, which again, maybe I'll do a video on that, but that's going to be a very, very difficult one to do because I'm not a union specialist or a HR specialist. However, the most important thing is you deal with it. Stress, I think, is like a cloud. It kind of grows. It doesn't necessarily dissipate unless you force it to dissipate. You need to actively manage your stress and you need to actively dissipate it when you can. Everyone who's a teacher is going to experience a level of stress. Teaching is a stressful job. You are standing up in front of, say, 30 students, all eyes on you, 60 eyes looking at you every single day, 5 or 6 or 7 times a day or whatever, how many lessons you have in a day. It is a stressful experience. However, if we manage that stress, you can be a teacher for the rest of your life. And some of you might go, no, I don't want to be. That's fine. But you can, and people do. And people have very, very positive teaching experiences when they look back at them when they retire. And the question you need to ask yourself is, if you're feeling stressed, why are you not? And the answer could be that, you know, something in this video will help. The answer could be that you're in the wrong school, that actually the school that you're in is not what you as a person, you know, is happy to work in, for instance. It could be that, you know, you don't like the subjects that you're teaching. It could be you're a teacher who teaches multiple subjects and actually one of them makes you feel really, you know, not good. And so that's something you can discuss as well. So everyone has different issues, everyone has different things that stress them, but just make sure you know what they are and you identify them and dissipate them as soon as you can, and work towards managing it. I hope this video has been useful. It's not necessarily been the funnest video to do, but I really wanted to get this video out as soon as possible. I think almost certainly we'll go back to this topic later on, but I'm more interested in the comments and the questions that you put down in the comment section on YouTube, to kind of move on with a different video on this topic, because I think if you say some quite interesting questions, we might just do a video on those alone as a kind of separate follow-up video, or we might just do a complete video on its own on stress again, and bring up your points. I've barely touched the surface of it because there's a lot of this that I don't want to discuss on YouTube for obvious reasons. If you find this video useful, please click like, and we're going to be releasing videos every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 5 o'clock PM UK time. If you want to keep up to date with our videos, please click subscribe, and I think there's a bell icon you've also got to press on YouTube, but I have no idea about that. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much.